Hello everyone, my name is Deborah and this is my channel, The Silver Violet Flame. So I have been guided to tell my story about social anxiety. It's the first time that I've ever spoken of it to a large audience, and really when I thought about it, I hadn't really spoken about it to anyone except my own healing sessions that I went through, and even then I didn't even speak about it a lot. But I would like to ask you to support me by liking and subscribing if you feel at the end of what I'm offering here and proposing to work through with you, that you find it helpful, because it's a subject that is vast and I'm going to be doing it in parts. Because I started to get quite overwhelmed when I actually sat down and thought about it. My guides have been encouraging me to tell my story for a while now, but it brings up a lot of stuff. Even though I have processed a lot of my stuff, it brings me back to that place of sadness and a little bit of blame and a bit of shame as well. So it's just interesting to see and to observe. So I'm going to be talking to you from observer mode. I thought that would be best for me, so that I can be in a place of strength to talk to you and help you best. But I'm sure all of you are interested in hearing other people's stories about social anxiety, social phobia, whatever you want to label it as. It's very personal to each one of you. We all suffer very uniquely. Different things bring it out in us, different people, different situations. So here goes. Here's my story. Let me see. I've just made some notes because, as I say, it is so vast and I want to make sure I include everything. So if you see me reading a lot, it's because I have just written everything down and I don't want to miss anything out, because that little detail might be so important to even one person who can say, yes, I relate to that. So also it's important for me to tell you that I will be, in the next videos that follow, showing you how I worked through this and came out the other way, I'm so happy to say. So here goes. I was always a quiet child, shy, not one to seek attention. My family would call me placid. My sister was an extrovert, so I didn't get much of a look in when it came to voicing myself. So I learned to observe, and I was a daydreamer by nature. Still am a daydreamer, and I've learned that that is my superpower. Part of what I'm going to talk about is what I observed, how I perceived the world to be for me, and how self-empowerment was never encouraged in my family, especially for the female of the species. Most of the encouragement to excel and possibly to go to university was geared towards my brother, because, quote, a man will hold down a job, he will have to support his family for life, whereas a woman, she'll just work for a short while and get married and have her children. Very, very old-fashioned upbringing. So it wasn't instilled to me to excel, and this didn't help with my already rock bottom self-worth. Perhaps not so rock bottom at the beginning, but this is a gradual process, because social anxiety, social phobia is a learned behaviour. So, yeah, let me see. Okay. When I actually sat down to write all this down, I was just interested to see and observe what emotions it brought up in me. So it was a lot of regret, a lot of resentment. I felt like my youth was stolen from me, and I didn't have a name for it, which was so frustrating. I thought I was very alone, that I was the only person in the world who felt this way. And I'll go in deeper to that as we go along. My mind felt like it was split in two, and it was exhausting. One half was avoiding people, situations, and anything that caused me to receive attention, good attention or bad attention. I hid myself. I hid my self-worth. I knew I had self-worth, but it was so deep down within me, I just couldn't find it enough to express it. I was so low, and my mantra would be, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? I would ask myself repeatedly, how did I get this way? What happened to me? Why am I so different from my siblings? Okay. How I concentrated on my studies, my schoolwork, I just do not know, but I do know that it wasn't fully, because as I said, my mind and my brain had two agendas. I had to cope with this, avoiding situations, what person is going to be coming into the room, what kind of context am I going to be involved? Will I have to speak? Where are we going? Will I be able to cope? Always like this voice saying to me, you have to compensate for all of this. So it was hard. It was really draining. It was taxing, and it just took up a lot of energy. And I thought a lot of the time, how can I just disappear and not deal with this? So I am simply living in fear, you would say. So that would be, my, if I look back and say now, what if someone said to me, how did you live in those years? And I would say I was living in fear. I was living in fear all the time. Thankfully, now I can say, no, I don't live in fear, because I have the coping mechanisms. But for a lot of my life, I lived in fear. And it chipped away at me daily, because as I said before, it's a learned response, social anxiety and social phobia. So without getting too technical, what we're doing is we're connecting with the amygdala in our brains, and it is responsible for learned behavior. So whatever you're feeding it, it's going to think, well, that's the way she wants me to respond. So that's how I will continue to respond. So when we're healing this, we have to unravel all of that. So what I done was I set myself a very low bar in life, because I knew back then that I couldn't cope with anything like a job that was needed me to integrate with people at a high level. I just didn't feel I had those skills and those abilities within me. I felt hopeless. I couldn't talk about it. My home environment was, just get on with it. You think too much. Very old-fashioned, as I said. So I was mentally exhausted. I was physically exhausted. The tension in my neck and shoulders would be unbearable, because I kind of locked myself in, especially in those social situations where there was more than one person. I found small groups for me was very intimidating. I know a lot of people, it's when they go out into big crowds or even go into shops and make purchases, they feel their social anxiety excelling. But for me, I was okay with that. For me, it was more intimate groups where I felt someone would say to me, well, Deborah, tell us about you. And that was the last thing I wanted. I didn't want anybody to focus on me. I felt like I was locking myself in my body with this tension. It was like this, and I couldn't really move my head. So I would just be locked in, and then I would sort of, if anyone said anything to me, I would jump. And this became like a built up fear in me that I'm going to jump out of my skin if someone calls my name, or if someone wants me to interact. That was huge. For me, that was huge. So I avoided the intimate conversations and the situations where I would be perhaps called upon, always thinking, ahead. This part of my brain was just used up with avoidance. How can I not be in this situation? How can I protect myself, basically? Also, sitting down at a table and breaking bread with people, I find that very okay. A big table where everybody's talking and there's noise, but when there was quiet and the conversation was awkward and I felt perhaps someone might again ask me something, that was my big thing. So I didn't know where I was, what I was going into. And often I would have a drink. I would just have a couple of glasses of wine. Because a lot of the time I'm so fed up with this. This is fucked up. Let's just have a couple of drinks. And that would be my crutch. Because I just didn't have the energy a lot of the time to cope with it. And you can hear my voice and my throat chakra closing over here as I'm talking, because it is such a personal thing. I mean, it is what has made me into the person I am now, and for that I am thankful, because it has put me upon my spiritual path and it has brought me to my healing. And I know that I will be able to help other people with my own voice, but I want you to appreciate that I appreciate you and all you who are listening, and I hear you. I mean, I'm not one of these people who come on and go, oh, let's hear how I got myself through social anxiety and social phobia, because, it's easy. Take this route, cognitive behavior, antidepressants, do this, do that. No, this is my truth. It's how I navigated through it. It's going to be very real and it's going to be very raw. So that's why my throat is shaky, because a lot of this stuff, it's a big part of who I am, and it will always be a big part of who I am. And it will be my superpower, because I know I will never go back to that place. I'll go back to it as I am now, to revisit and to help others. But I will never go back to that place that made me so self-loathing, so tiny, so insignificant, so sad, so depressed, and so unnourished and unsupported. I haven't got enough words to explain how it made me feel. But I got through it, and that's the important thing. And we'll get to that eventually. So one-to-one felt bearable for me, because I knew with the rhythm of the conversation, I knew it was being, it was just me, and I could kind of control the one-to-one. I didn't feel like anything was going to come to me out of the blue. For me, the one-to-one was fine. But I did blame myself for a lot of it, because I thought there was a lot of self-degradation. There was a lot of feeling stupid, like I wasn't clever enough. And I'm missing out on something here. Look at everyone else, okay? A lot of blame, a lot of shame, very little self-worth. So, let's see. Okay, so really and truly at about the age of 17/18 is when this fully impacted on me. I wouldn't say I was socially anxious to the degree of labelling the subject. In those years before I became a full-blown teenager, it definitely kicked in to me when I was 17/18. I remember the very first time I felt the strength of it. I was sitting in typing class. Yes, that's how old I am, typing class. And the teacher was dictating and we were typing. And I was excellent at typing. I was top of the class. I was fast. I was brilliant. One of those things that I just thought, I can do this. I'm great at this. But then it all changed because I felt the teacher's eyes gazing upon me. And I know a lot of you can relate to that. You feel everybody's looking at you. You feel like I'm the centre of attention here. I don't like it. I can't cope with it. So what do? So I started tensing up. My neck started tensing up. And the self-talk was like, why is she looking at me? And I'm not worthy of this. The thoughts were just crazy. And I just jumped like that. And I just thought afterwards, what was that? And I remember thinking, that's never going to happen to me again. But it did. That was my thing. Because I couldn't get rid of the thought. I couldn't understand what was happening to me. Remember, I didn't have a name for it. All I knew was I had started to feel tense and anxious because someone was looking at me. When I look back on it, I think, was it because I was really, really good at this and I didn't feel worthy of being good? I think a lot of it is self-worth. Believe me, I've had a long time to process all of this, but a big part of it is self-worth. But anyway, it continued on. But that's where it started. I really just want to make this first video short. It's just really an introduction to me, how I got to that place of social anxiety, what my background was, my childhood, just so you can sink in me, my own personal story, and little things that'll come in that perhaps you can relate to. But this tainted everything that's happening in my typing class. That was just a catalyst for the rest of my adult life. Okay? It tainted everything. I became exhausted physically, mentally, spiritually. It took up so much of my energy coping with this, coping with my studies, coping with being a teenager. It was just like, oh, it's not supposed to be this way. And when I do look back on it now in observer mode, I just say to myself, Deborah, you deserve a medal for coming through that, for coming out the other side and for coping with it. Because you had no support, you had no one to talk to, you just had to go on a journey yourself. So what I done was I read books, I searched, there was no internet then, so I just did my own research. But there's big blocks in between that I want to cover, and I don't want to leap ahead too much. So what I want to do is kind of leave it there for you now, The other video will be coming up after this one, and you can go on to that. I'll title it more specific, but for now I just want to leave you with this part. I've written a lot of stuff down here. I didn't understand myself, and I knew if I didn't understand myself, how could I expect other people to understand myself? I didn't know who I was, because this took up so much rubbish in my head. But it might sound like rubbish to people who have never suffered from social phobia or social anxiety, but it's very, very real to us that have. So I have so much to share, and as I say, it's not easy, you know, bearing all here, especially when you've never done it before. But hopefully I'll get better at it. So if you would like and subscribe, that would really, you know, help me feel supported, and to know that there's a lot of you out there watching. And if you would comment as well, if there's anything you would like me to talk about from my experience, anything at all, just put it in the comments. And in the next video, we will talk about how I navigated through this. A lot of it will be through my own personal awakening process, spirituality, which I think the tool is just so valuable for this, because a lot of it is connection to something bigger than yourself. That when you have the anxiety, you're just always thinking of the future and you're not being present with yourself. So that's one to take away with you. And I feel like medication and cognitive behavior therapy, a lot of it can help certain people. For me, the medication, yes, because it lifts your mood, but it doesn't get to the core of what needs to be released. And a lot of the time, that's just layers that need to be released. I used to think there was one magic trick that I could go to some hypnotherapist or a psychologist or someone and they would magically free me up from this. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But for me, it was taking off layers. And each time I did visit someone with a specific skill, it did help to a certain extent, but it didn't get to the root. But it did eventually, and that's the fabulous news, and that's why I'm sitting here with a big fat smile on my face. That's why I'm doing the work that I'm doing now. So take that away with you. Have a good wee think. Write in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for listening, and give me a wee like and subscribe if you like my story and if you want to hear more. Thank you so much. Much love. Bye.